All right, in this video, we're going to learn how to draw a basic character using JavaScript by plotting shapes using X and Y positions. So I've already made a new program in Open Processing, or a new sketch, and we're just going to do a little bit of cleanup here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to label my close setup bracket. So I'm going to drop in a comment on close setup, and then we're going to label close draw. So drop in a comment on close draw. Now, there's a lot here that we don't actually need. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to delete background from setup and move it to draw. And I'm going to set the background to be black. And I like to put a color after every command just so it's easier to know what color it is. 0, of course, is black. Now, the next thing is we're going to set our canvas size to be something specific. So instead of having full screen, I'm going to set it to be 500 pixels by 500 pixels. So that way it's easier for me to know where my shapes are. And then the next thing we're doing is we're going to set our rect mode to be center. So any rectangles we draw will now have a center origin. You don't have to do that for ellipses because ellipses are already centered. Now the default program gives us this ellipse that follows our mouse around. Okay, we don't want that. I actually want this ellipse to be perfectly centered on my screen. So instead of saying ellipse, mouse X, mouse Y, I'm going to say ellipse 250 to 50. Now I know that's the center because if I divide my width by 2 and my height by 2, it gives me 250 and 250. So if I press play, I now have a perfectly centered little dot. And if I change the size to be, say, 300 by 300 instead of 20 by 20, I now have a larger circle. And I'm actually even going to make it a little bit bigger. I'm going to go 400 by 400. So that should give us a nice large circle. Now, to set the color of something, you want to do it before you draw the shape. And any shape has 2 colors. So I'm actually going to make a comment, just going to call this face base. All right, so the base of our face is going to be a circle. And we're going to set the fill to be yellow. So that's 255. Red, 255 green, 0 blue. So that's going to be yellow. And if I wanted an outline, I could say stroke. Let's just make it red so you guys can see what the stroke looks like here. This would be red with a yellow outline. I don't actually want an outline, so instead I'm going to say no stroke. Like this. And this is actually going to turn off stroke. All right, so we have our yellow circle as the face of our base. Now, I want to actually draw a mouth that's a triangle. And the way that triangles work are a little different than the other shapes. Now, if I just grab a little tool here to draw on the screen, I'm going to show you. The way that a triangle works is essentially you start with 3 points. So if I wanted to draw, let's say a point here, a point here, and a point here, I would type in the X and Y position of each of those points. That's 6 numbers because there's 2 per point. There's XY, XY, and XY. And we can call this X1, Y1, X2, Y2, XY, 3. Then once you draw your points, processing will connect your dots and draw your triangle and fill that in accordingly. So I'm going to use this to be my mouth. All right, so let's go ahead and make a new little comment called mouth. All right, and I'm going to set the fill to be red just so it's easy for me to see what I'm doing for now. And we're going to draw a triangle. So I'm going to say triangle, and I know my first point is going to be right in the center. So that's going to be 250, 250. My second point, I want to be somewhere off to the right. So that's going to be something like, I don't know, 500, the edge of my screen, and somewhere above the center. So that's going to be a smaller number. Let's try 150. My last point, I'm just going to put a space between these points because I can, just to break them up. My last point is also going to be off to the right, so 500, but below center. So let's try something like 350. Let's push play. And I spelled the word triangle wrong. Please hold. It's supposed to be an L there. Let's try that again. Okay, there's my triangle. Now I don't actually want it to be red. I'm going to make it black. I did it red just so it was easy to see the triangle, but now that I know it's in the right spot, I'm going to make it black, and it looks like we've made Pac-Man, or almost. I'm actually going to open his mouth a little bit more. So for example, if I did, let's say, 100 and 400 for my 4th and 6th number, we now have a bigger mouth. Okay. Now, last step, we just need an eye, which is going to be another circle right here-ish. So we're going to make a new comment called eye. We're going to keep our fill black. And we're going to draw an ellipse. And I'm just going to kind of guess with the coordinates here. Let's try something like, I don't know, 150, 350, and let's make it 100 by 100. So I should point out that the x and the y is 150 by 350, and then the width and the height is 100 by 100. Let's push play. Whoa, that is not in the right spot at all. My x should be 350, and my y should be 150. Let's try that. All right, our spot is closer. That's way too big, so let's make it 50 by 50. Closer. Let's move it left a bit, or closer to the center, so let's try 290. And I think that's pretty good. So there is our Pac-Man. Now this, of course, looks like a drawn image, but we know that it was actually programmed using code.